let's get into this. If I hope you're comfortable and all, and you're ready for this.
I'm absolutely comfortable.
Yeah, cool. So, welcome, Comrade Tikender. Welcome to the Bada Pow show. And
Thank you.
um, so, you have been a deputy mayor of Shimla, and
Yeah.
you have uh, worked a lot uh, in like how a city functions, and you by your education also you have a relationship with the urbanist profession, if one can say. And so one very important thing that I have noticed, which has come about in public discourse, like which I never heard while I was in college, because I myself studied architecture, uh, is this models of development, and you love to talk about this. And
Yeah.
we started listening to it only, I think, in 2010s was the first time. Like in architecture college, no one ever talked about like a city can be this kind of a city or that kind of a city. We all were studying urban design and urban planning, but no one talked about these models of development. We studied about these utopias, like Thomas More had a utopia, and then Corbusier had a utopia, which was the utopian city, but they were not like taken seriously by architecture students. They were just like pretty graphics. You look at them and like, okay, this is the idea.
And why do
And
you forget Ian Makab?
yeah, so all these, and like
Planning with nature, yeah.
the closest I think we came in India was Chandigarh to
Yeah,
that
Chandigarh.
kind of an idea. And
Corbusier, yeah.
and now everyone hates it.
I don't know why people hate Chandigarh. It's such a beautiful place.
It is a beautiful place.
Yeah.
It just has developed this kind of impression that it is a city for retirees and young boys in jeeps who fight
Yeah.
with hockeys. I don't know why. Maybe it's a stereotype. We need to probably address that in the PC section of the show. So,
Yeah.
tell me about this models of development, and like why are we suddenly talking about this?
Well, I think why are we talking about this is we should go back to our Millennium Development Goals and the Sustainable Development Goals.
Yeah.
And actually, if we understand, uh, we were part of that Urban Habitat 3. The Urban Habitat 2 spoke about the executive director spoke about a new revolution in the urban. So
Okay.
if you remember those, yeah, that terminology. Of course, the United Nations has its own understanding of revolution, so
Yeah.
don't get confused with their revolution and the kind of revolution probably we talk about. But still, they spoke about revolution, the word that was really haunted badly.
Yeah.
And by the time we reached the third habitat, I was also a delegate there in Quito,
Okay.
the capital of Ecuador.
Okay.
And there, actually, John Claus, who was the executive director, this is what I've been very famously saying time and again. He said, hell with this laissez faire. I mean, we have to
Yeah.
go back to the basics.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen how unsustainable this model of development is.
I thought they
And
have been crying that laissez-faire
seen,
was the
yeah,
basics.
yeah, yeah. So that's what I mean. Come imagine. I mean, it's coming from the executive director of the Habitat
Yeah.
3,
Yeah.
and he was time and again reminding us that we have to go back to the basics.
Yeah.
So the basics could be very different. I would suggest. I think, but then we've seen these 3 decades or 4 decades. Especially, I think the 3 or 4 elements that I would like to discuss.
Hmm.
The first element is that cities. I mean, there was this transformation that we witnessed in the cities. Probably in the West, it was earlier, 10 or 15 years before us,
Yeah.
and in India, it started in 1990s.
Yeah.
So when this whole boogie woogie of opening up
Yeah.
and liberalization happened, and the
Yes.
and the prime driver for liberalization was considered to be privatization.
Yeah.
And privatization meant privatization of virtually everything, of
Right.
assets, of even certain values to the society, which were like inherently considered to be very sacrosanct. I'll come to that, by the way.
Yeah.
That's very interesting
Yeah.
thing. But in the West, I think it happened some 20 years prior to us.
Okay.
I mean, they experimented those very interesting models.
To be honest, what
And
I remember, I'm sorry for interrupting, is like to be honest, for what I remember as the most aggressive thing that happened in the 90s was suddenly cricket became extremely political and extremely like everyone was like, no,
Uh,
cricket is this, like, and
yeah.
it
I
became,
mean, you could monetize anything, na? Anything and everything,
yeah,
any damn thing.
and it
So
became
I think,
almost unbearable, like suddenly the
yeah. So
advertising around it and everything.
absolutely. So I mean, all that is interrelated.
Yeah,
So I think the cities provided a large framework for 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 this transformation to take place.
yeah,
And being in the city, I can easily tell you and smell
yeah,
that cities being considered as mere city managers got transformed into city entrepreneurs.
yeah,
So these ideas, very fancy words, and those jargons were really hitting us.
yeah,
Competitive cities,
yeah,
so you have to compete. So Shanghai will compete with the Mumbai.
yeah,
Shimla will compete with say Bremen in
yeah,
Germany.
yeah,
And how do you compete? We
yeah,
compete by easing our norms, land monetization,
yeah,
allowing the capital to really enter, and they are the ones who are going to decide our future. And our urbanization is pathetic. We can't even provide drinking water. Or look at our sanitation, look at our sewage. So we do not know how to prepare our plans. And those plans then will be prepared by large tech consultants who would come uh, from from different agencies and say,
yeah,
hey, you do not
yeah,
know how to plan the city. We will
yeah.
plan that for you. So that's the first thing.
I
So
remember
this
JNU RRM was one of such
JNN
initiatives.
was just one of the projects. I mean, just one of the projects, one of the
Yeah,
initiatives, definitely
yeah,
one of the initiatives. But
yeah,
I think it started much earlier. It started quite I mean, before the JNNURM came. JNNURM was very recent phenomenon.
yeah,
It happened in 2007 and in 2012. And I remember a very funny anecdote. When they said the reforms,
yeah.
because when these were planned, the left was supporting the UPA
Yes,
one.
yes,
So,
yes.
so they said, in UPA, Sitaram and Prakash will not agree to these proposals. Please put reforms in it. So
Yeah,
they incorporated those reforms
yeah,
also. But
yeah,
we've seen, I mean, what kind of reforms these were. I mean, all project oriented, and actually to create certain assets in the cities uh, for the, I mean, irrespective of the fact whether it is leading to equality, equity, so I think this is something very important. The
yeah,
transformation that took place. That's the first thing. So cities being considered from city managers to city entrepreneurs.
yeah,
So enshrining that's the first thing. The second thing I think which is very important is that there is massive kind of surplus that I mean in political economy terms
yeah,
that got generated from these cities.
yeah,
And if you see now, I think the cities, though comprise I think 2% to 3% of the land mass in
yeah,
India,
yes,
and 66% of GDP, but
yeah.
90% of the government revenue comes from the cities. So you can
Some,
easily understand, I mean,
yeah,
the kind of capital accumulation that takes place in the
yeah,
cities. Now, how does this accumulation takes place?
right,
Now, there's something very interesting that has happened. And why I say it's 90s, because since the 90s, certain things and I mean, which I pointed out earlier also, which were considered to be use value.
yeah,
Take for example, is education
right,
a right, or I mean, is a privilege?
yeah.
And similarly, take for example, water. Is it a right or a need?
Or even
So
housing, because I remember in
even
the
housing,
80s, we used to say roti, kapda, and makan are fundamental,
okay,
and suddenly they said, no, no, no,
actually,
makan is not fundamental. And
actually,
I'm like,
so
what?
I would
How is
say
it not
keep
fundamental?
Makan very far. Forget about the Makan right now.
Yeah,
Just let us go to the basic of water.
yeah,
So is water a need or
yeah,
is water a right?
yeah,
So if it is a right, then there's certain I mean there's certain things that accrue of that right vis-a-vis the state.
yeah,
But if it is a need, like the Washington Consensus makes us believe,
yeah,
then the need can be sufficed by
right,
sewers, distilleries, and all.
yeah,
There's
right,
massive monetization that takes place,
right,
and in all those guys and fancy slogans that they come 24/7,
yeah,
SCADA system, all
yeah,
that capital intensive technologies,
yeah,
which we may want, which we may not want. I mean, by being a labor surplus yeah, country.
yeah,
So yeah, so water, so utilities basically, education,
yeah,
and there are very funny anecdotes on education, which I wrote also very recently.
okay,
That despite that there was a pandemic, but during the Diwali we saw advertisements flooding our
yes,
newspapers, and
yes,
these advertisements were coming from Amazon,
yes,
the large home delivery utilities.
yeah,
But all of a sudden, when the NEET result came out,
yeah,
Amazon was gone. It was
yeah,
Baiju, it was Vedantu, and
yeah,
so it's almost 15,000, 20,000 crore venture
yeah,
fund that is
yeah,
entered. So in education, so the massive flow of money that is taking place from
yeah,
education, health, water, privatization of utilities. So that's the second thing that has happened in the city. So that's why I said this is very uncertain. Third, what it has led to is that massive inequity, huge amount of inequity has increased.
right.
A, because of these interventions that have happened, and the kind of actually our policy paradigm shift that took place.
Hmm.
But at the same time, also because the kind of capitalist production also changed in the cities. Now, let me just take you back to 85. I would suggest when Charles Correa was heading the first urban commission,
Right.
and I've gone through those reports of the first urban commission, and then after that we have not had any urban commission, by the way.
Hmm.
So the gist of that urban commission is that if we have to handle India,
Hmm.
India is a manufacturing hub. So the cities were linked to manufacturing. That was the story of the mid 80s when the
Hmm.
first urban commission came.
Hmm.
So you can imagine, what does that mean? Manufacturing means more organized sector.
Right.
Manufacturing means more bargaining power vis-a-vis the employer. I mean that's what I'm. So a better way of living and better way of you can say the Gini coefficient that we talk about.
Right.
But actually, what has happened now, uh, the informality, the informal sector has gone to almost 93%, which was 75% or say 74%
Right.
during the. So there's massive kind of unorganized sector that has developed, informal sector that has creeped in, and there is no guarantee of wages, no guarantee of job, no guarantee of employment, and new forms of so manufacturing is completely gone. It's not
Right.
the manufacturing that is steering our cities.
Right.
It's the
Right.
services sector, or it's like the reproduction of capital, what we call
Right.
uh, various forms. Uh, uh, but that has also brought in a huge informal sector, which has completely no bargaining power. I mean, 85% of the people have no written contracts in the cities
Hmm. Hmm.
with their employer, and almost 90% sustain on wages less than 8,000 or 9,000 a month.
Right.
So
Right.
that's why when the first lockdown was announced,
Yeah.
and the migrants, those who have come in
Yeah.
80s, migration was not a big issue. That's why when we had this the 74th constitutional amendment in 1994,
Yeah.
migration was not even touched upon, though it
Okay.
spoke. There lots of mention about decentralization, 18 subjects being handed over. Migration is not even touched upon because maybe it's perhaps it was not a big issue, but today migration is such a large issue. So I mean, when we talk about models, without speaking about the kind of transformation that has taken place in these 3 decades,
Hmm.
a which has led to massive accumulation of capital,
Hmm.
massive accumulation of I mean and appropriation of capital from the
Hmm.
cities,
Hmm.
and not its democratization back to the people in
Hmm.
various forms,
Hmm.
say in forms of employment, in jobs or whatever,
Hmm.
and the what I call the rapacious loot of urban commons.
Hmm.
You just see the transformation that took place.
Hmm.
I'll share a very funny anecdote with you.
Hmm.
Sometime back I was hosting a show on the television called The Urban Agenda.
Okay.
So one of the shows I was very keen
Hmm.
to host it in, and many of these shows we hosted not in the studio but outside. For
Hmm.
example, if it's uh, a waste treatment plant, so we'll go to the waste treatment plant. We'll shoot
Hmm.
there,
Hmm.
call our guests there,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
explain what it
Hmm.
is. So in Gurgaon, we wanted to know about the mystery of the missing lakes.
Yeah.
So we went to Gurgaon, and I was very keen to shoot this at a place
Yeah.
where Shah Rukh Khan became Shah Rukh Khan. So there's an interesting. Shah Rukh Khan became Shah Rukh Khan because of a serial
Fauji.
called Fauji. Yeah.
Fauji. Yeah.
So that Fauji was shot in one of the lakes where I was told he literally drowned at one point of time.
Wow.
So
Okay.
now that lake is gone. I went to that site.
Which lake is
That
it?
lake is
Ghata?
I don't remember the name, but that's gone. So half
Okay.
of the lake is occupied by a park, and another one is a real estate development. So
Yeah.
this transformation is virtually universal in all our cities.
Yeah.
The way the urban commons have been usurped
Yeah.
for the need of private capital.
Yeah.
Uh, so we can see this transformation. But what has this led to? is also the massive kind of inequity and the asset holding capacity of the people. We have the latest Oxfam report that says that 10% of the top and 10% of the bottom asset holders, if you just match, the difference is 500 times in rural India, but
Yeah.
50,000 times in urban India. 50,000 times. How can you expect such a system to sustain? These models are completely unsustainable. And then let's come to housing. I mean,
Yeah.
housing, which was considered, as you rightly pointed out, as a right.
Yeah.
Uh, in any given paradigm, I think what they say is 25% of the housing should be formal, and 75% can come from private or other sectors.
Yeah.
In India, we've gone down from 6% to 3%.
Yeah.
Now imagine where, I mean, that's why we find the proliferation of slums,
Yeah.
you know. And the fourth point that is also very important, but which is also linked to the first 3 points, is who plans for whom.
Yeah.
I mean, when I became the deputy mayor, and I was a directly elected deputy mayor. I mean,
Yeah.
directly means, I mean, I was not elected amongst the councillors.
Yeah.
So I thought, like, I am the one who's responsible for the town.
Yeah.
But soon I realized, no, I'm not the one who's responsible for the town.
Yeah.
And then it was universally accepted throughout the country. Now, Delhi, take for example, the chief minister, whom I call the Delhi Metropolitan Mayor. I mean, he's nothing more than that. Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, does he plan for Delhi? I mean, it's the Delhi Development Authority, a
Yeah.
parastatal.
Yeah.
It's Mumbai Development Authority.
Yeah.
Everywhere in the country, these planning processes. I mean, the plan which is so essential,
Yeah.
which should have been actually been part and parcel of urban governance, I mean, where
Right.
people should have been part and parcel of this planning process.
Right.
But we find these parastatals, mainly development authorities. For example, we have the Greater Mohali Urban Area Development Authority.
Hmm.
Shimla, it's the town and country planning.
Hmm.
So the point is, and all these parastatals somehow at the backbone has some consultant which is linked to these transnational corporations,
Hmm.
and who are actually deciding the future of urbanization in India, which is
Hmm.
completely unsustainable. It is
Hmm.
iniquitous. That's the fourth point. And then when I was pointing out not just planning, but even small things, take for example, city sanitation plan. Take for
Hmm.
example the city mobility plan.
Hmm.
Where is this process of cities engagement or
Hmm.
the citizens engagement
Hmm.
in the entire process? So we
Hmm.
find large capital intensive technologies being promoted.
Hmm.
We may not want a metro in every city, but
Yeah.
a metro, for example, Jaipur. Look at the
Yeah.
way the metro is running.
Yeah.
Because mobility is such an important subject, and there's massive capital intensive technologies
Yeah.
because there are giants behind those technologies. And lastly, I think the worst thing that is happening is the Internet of Things. I mean, the superstructure of smart cities that is being laid upon.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Yeah, smart cities and the Internet of Things. The control command center, it's all trash that we're finding.
Yeah.
But one of the impediments that was, of course, very weak even earlier,
Yeah.
the elected council has further been crashed out. So now the smart cities project is not implemented by the elected councils,
Yeah.
but by the special purpose vehicles, and none of the elected members happens to be chairing or actually leading these special purpose vehicles. So that approach of project orientation that you pointed out from JNURM has actually, I mean, what John Claus was screamingly saying that for heaven's sake, let's get rid of this. Instead, what we are finding in India, instead of getting rid of this, we find further reinforcement of those ideas. We find further alienation of people in the planning process. We
Hmm.
find further inequity getting actually. So these models can't be sustained. We have to find alternatives,
Hmm.
and those alternatives have to be at places where the people's movement is strong, probably
Hmm.
at the city level, or even take for example in Gorakhpur, there are lots and lots of movement. Voices being raised, for
Hmm.
those wetlands, for those ponds. I mean, because those ponds are being completely usurped by. So the whole question of urban commons, the whole question
Right.
of green cover in the city, I think these are class issues. These are
Hmm.
issues of the people.
Hmm.
Providing water, and that tap water being potable. Why should we buy water from aquaguards and all? Why should we use those aquaguards? I
Right.
think so. Right from city level, pan city level, policy intervention to smaller interventions of even a playground, I would suggest,
Hmm.
are and should be part and parcel of these new
Hmm.
forms or new models of development.
Hmm.
Um, and you can talk more about that.
Uh, when you talk about like who should be deciding how a city should be built,
Yeah.
and like who is building it. In my observation, I have seen two theories broadly on this. One is that when they say like let's all of us like pull our hands back and let the experts do it, like they did in a lot of American cities, where like one architect comes in, like he breaks the entire city and he says now we are building from one corner to the other, where like one guy and like he has this one idea and he makes the entire city like that, and then they have this one big central park and the city is growing around. It's a different issue that like the city is much bigger than the central park, so it doesn't serve the city in the way it could have or should have, or maybe there should have been more parks. Different issue. And the other way is which is proposed by a lot of postmodernist architects, which like I again like have it doesn't feel right to me, where they say like no, people are living in slums, people are living in informal housing, that's how people live, that's how people want to live. Let's just give them in situ services, and if a fire truck doesn't go there, then it doesn't go there, it's like it's okay. And let's just give them basic services, and baki let the public like the private sector take care of everything else, and let people make informally and whatever, and like let again the laissez-faire way of doing things. In my observation, what has happened is across Gurgaon, because I studied Gurgaon for my thesis, and now even in Saket, because everyone thought, oh no, malls don't fail, they just failed in Gurgaon because like everything is far apart. It will
Yeah.
work in Delhi. Malls will totally work in Delhi. Now the
Yeah.
Saket Mall has failed,
Yeah.
and
It's
and the
bound to, yeah.
and the shops right across the road, which are informal shops in the informal area, the Lal Dora
Yeah.
area, which no one wants to touch and no one wants to talk about. Suddenly, like the shops there are like selling food and everything that people need to. And
Yeah.
but like the way capitalism works is, do I
Yeah. Yeah.
want to go to a mall? Yes, I totally want to go to a mall. Do I
Uh,
want to buy from a mall? No, I don't want to buy from a mall. I
yeah.
buy my clothes from
So,
Chandni Chowk or like Sarojini Nagar, which are like these age old already tested methods of like you said, going back to the basics, because like that's the correct price of buying a shirt. I don't want to pay 5,000 rupees for a shirt जो मेरे को सरोजिनी नगर में 500 रुपए में मिलने वाली है. So like you pointed out, like it keeps coming back to informal, but then do we let that happen? Do we क्या हम लोगों को भगवान भरोसे छोड़ दें और लाइक पहले उनको ठेला लगाने दें और फिर बोलें कि अब तुमने ठेला लगा दिया है तो अब हम तुमको लाइसेंस देंगे, विच इज समथिंग दे ट्राई टू डू इन मुंबई, वेयर दे सेड कि अच्छा चलो ठीक है तुमको पहले दे रिमूव्ड एवरीवन फ्रॉम मरीन ड्राइव, एंड दे सेड कि मरीन ड्राइव पे कोई गोलगप्पे भी नहीं बेच सकता, और वो जो बेचारे वो मालिश करने वाले थे वो मालिश भी नहीं कर सकते. उसके बाद उन्होंने बोला कि अच्छा चलो ठीक है, जो भी हम एक दिन जाएंगे बाहर, जो भी हमें गोलगप्पे या नारियल बेचता हुआ मिला वो उसको हम लाइसेंस दे देंगे. और वहाँ पे लोग एक एक दो दो नारियल लेके खड़े हो गए कि हमें लाइसेंस दे दीजिए जी. सो one way is like where they overdo this and they say ki like let people decide how they want to live, how they want to work, and let's just provide them services there. One is like where like there is this one genius Le Corbusier, and he comes and he tells you how things should be done and this is how you should live.
well, I think the first, I mean, there's a very interesting point that you raised.
Yeah.
The first thing is, I mean, what you pointed out is what I call the Haussmannization, Mosaicization of the cities. So Haussmann will come for Napoleon and bring in a large boulevard. So within Paris, and that's how we know what Haussmannization of Paris means, and we also know what happened to Napoleon after that. So I
Right.
don't want to repeat history there here, and exactly what was pointed out by Moses. But I think one of the finest critiques to such form of urbanization or such forms of planning has come from Samuel Stein in his very seminal work called The Capital City, where he says we are not corrupt actually as planners. Actually, the system makes us corrupt,
Yeah.
So,
Which is
so,
every
so,
cop
and
ever. Yeah.
yeah, and so he also focuses on, this decentralized but democratic planning.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between just decentralization and also adding democratization to that,
Yeah.
where they own it. So I
Yeah.
think that's why. And then he said, yeah, experts can come, like what Romi Khosla has been pointing out here in
Yeah.
India. He
Yeah.
says actually, and I don't know whether our planning graduates and architect graduates would like that. He says after graduation, actually, they should get a cooling off period of 2 years, of
Yeah.
course, with full salaries,
Yeah.
and they must be sent back to the towns and cities. At least they will be able to learn what
Yeah.
India is. At
Yeah.
the same time, the cities will be able to get their plans instead of those plans coming up from, you know, large tech companies or
Yeah.
those consultants. So
Yeah.
yeah, I stand completely for planning. I mean, but the point is, who plans for whom? I
Yeah.
mean, how are we engaging the people? Is citizen part and parcel of it,
Yeah.
or is it more of a ruler ruled kind of, like I want, like you just pointed out, Napoleon
Yeah.
or the supreme commander we have these days in India,
Yeah.
who says
Yeah.
all of a sudden I want a central vista.
Yeah.
Give it a damn. I mean, whether
Yeah.
the trees are chopped down, or I
Yeah.
think that also we need to discuss. The
Yeah. Yeah.
latest revolution, especially that has
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
on the Central Vista. The Central
Yeah.
Vista is not just about. So just we'll just
But
park
it
it
is
because
that kind of thinking again. It's that kind of thinking
yeah,
where like one man and his utopia is like
that's dangerous.
everyone is
Yeah. So,
forced
so
to live
yeah, yeah. No,
according to
that's
that.
dangerous. I would say that's dangerous. That's not the way. That's not the healthy way,
Yeah.
because people will not own that substance, and
Yeah.
there will be massive alienation to such a person. And this is, and after all, don't forget. I mean, why Napoleon went in a war with Bismarck, and of course he lost, is precisely because of horsemen. I mean, that's what we know about history. So architects have a very important role, and Albert Speer for that matter, in the case of Hitler. Okay, so I don't know whether I can draw a parallel with Albert Speer and our Bimal Patel and Hitler and Modi. Well, we can park it later. But
And
to answer the
I'm sorry,
second question,
just
but
to
to answer the second question,
yeah.
so we'll park the Central Vista because I
Yeah.
think that's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is I think what the postmodernists are. I mean, I don't agree with them
Yeah.
completely. What they're saying that look, so,
Especially Rem
but
Koolhaas, who takes
huh,
photographs of slums and
yeah.
say, "Look, they are so beautiful." But have you lived in a slum, man? What are you talking
No. But
about?
the point is, yeah. So,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I mean, raising down the slums
Yeah.
without, and we've seen how rehabilitation works.
Yeah.
Actually, not a single case we have seen where
Yeah. It never.
and then they are shifted 40 kilometers, 50 kilometers away.
Yeah.
Take for example Mumbai. Mumbai, very classic
Yeah.
examples are there. I visited recently that town, that city, and found all of us suddenly find a person living in a slum goes to the 20th story, and
Yeah.
then the lift doesn't work, and
Yeah.
when there is no water, then the guy takes water in a
Yeah.
bucket 20 stories climb up.
Yeah.
So those are not the ways and those are not the forms,
Yeah.
because we don't see in that through that prism of equity, through that prism of inequality that exists
Right.
starkly and massively in our cities.
Right.
So I think that is important.
Right.
But I mean, there's a funny anecdote that I would share, about Marine Drive and all. I'm not sure about Marine Drive or Bombay, but I saw in Paris, in Paris also, right in front of the Eiffel Tower,
Hmm.
I could find a person with coal and selling cashew nuts. And guess who these guys were?
What the
Indian,
Indians?
Pakistani, and Bangladeshi. so, so it's universal. I mean, that's how our society is, and that's how our society is. There
Yeah.
is human. I mean, where are the assets? Tell me. The asset holding capacity has substantially reduced. I mean, what are we talking about? I think
Yeah.
that we can't run away. Forget about. I mean, whether we are speaking to the postmodernists or to the modernists
Hmm.
in that form. I
Hmm.
think the reality is that there is huge inequity that exists.
Hmm.
And in fact, the city development process, I'm not sure, because Samuel Stein has done a wonderful work where he says that in most of the cities, actually, the principal mode of accumulation of capital is through real estate development. I'm not sure how it happens in India,
Hmm.
but I'm in some of the cities, definitely that could be one of the reasons.
Hmm.
But then we've also seen how unsustainable it is, because if you go to
Right.
Noida,
Right.
you find large swathes of land. There are buildings. There's
Yeah.
no one who can stay in it.
Same in Gurgaon.
Yeah. So we can easily understand. I mean,
Yeah.
So what we need to do is to revisit the entire policy of
Yeah.
urban development,
Yeah.
and that's why I mean what we have been advocating, because we have one lone member, surviving lone member of the first urban commission,
Yeah.
Kirti Bhai Kirti Shah,
Yeah.
for a second urban commission. I
Hmm.
think we desperately require a second urban commission
Hmm.
which discusses, which talks about all these things. And I don't think there could be one single model. I think
Hmm.
we have to speak in multiple models,
Hmm.
but at the same time, not keeping the people aside.
Hmm.
After all, it is the repository of all this has to be the people.
Hmm.
So else there will be complete alienation. I mean, they will say, okay, someone is going to do for us.
Hmm.
That's not the way how things happen.
Hmm.
And empowering them. And the second thing is democratizing that process. Now I think we should go to Central Vista. You
Yeah,
were
yeah, yeah,
interested.
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So I have observed that throughout the history, every great king and every dictator and
great.
like
Okay. I don't think
great, by great I don't
any
mean,
king was great.
I'm not talking about their qualities. I'm talking
Uh,
about like those who owned big empires.
yeah,
They
yeah.
always had a pet architect, and that is true
Of
from
course, of
Nehru
course.
to
True, yeah.
Modi. They
Yeah.
and like
But there's a difference between the period of Nehru,
yeah,
who I would term as a modernist, because
yeah,
when
yes,
Chandigarh was being
yeah,
designed, I'm sure our viewers must know the story
yeah,
that when Chandigarh was designed, he told Kabuzia that look, this town should not become a ghost town
yeah,
because people are very poor.
yeah,
People have migrated from across the border.
hmm,
They do not have any asset, no belongings.
hmm,
And imagine this town is being constructed for such poor people.
hmm,
And if you see apart from the genius of Corbusier, like seven vector roads,
hmm,
which road is to face the main road. That's why you
hmm,
don't find accidents. No,
hmm,
once you come out of the sector, you
hmm,
don't enter the main road. I mean, you
hmm,
enter through a different road.
hmm.
This simple form of planning I did not find in
But then
either
again,
Gurgaon or.
it is that top down designing it. He did
But
not
yeah,
ask
yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But at the same time, no, yeah, okay, okay. I will come to that later. But at the same time, also uh, not to use steel, okay, not to use drain bus, so
Hmm,
that you are not able to.
hmm,
I mean, you don't increase the cost, you don't
yeah,
escalate the cost of the houses.
yeah,
So, and all the material was, I mean, indigenous,
hmm,
earthen. I mean,
right,
from China, you don't have to buy anything. Very minimum use of cement.
hmm,
Yeah, I think, but at the same time, those were the new towns that were created.
yeah.
So I think probably that was the direction which the the urbanization was being unfolded.
Yes, but
But
then
now,
Rem Koolhaas comes and he says, "Look at Panchkula. Like, why is Panchkula doing better? Why are people shifting to there? Because like people just live. They are allowed to live
I
however
don't
they."
think why, because they don't get property in Chandigarh
Yeah,
anymore.
that's
No,
one reason. That's one reason.
who can buy
Definitely.
the same town which was supposed to be a ghost town is now
Yeah,
like thronging. No,
yeah.
why should you forget that?
Yeah, we will have to probably have another interview some other day to talk about the
For sure, for sure.
postmodernists. So
Yeah,
yes, coming down to so like every one of these. Now I'm saying great with quotes. Leaders have had a pet architect, and this pet architect is supposed to like
yeah,
always design top down and like break everything and like make this thing which is like better than everything else that has existed. And but like all the sustainability goals are always like what already exists is the most sustainable building, even if it consumes more electricity. To break it down and then make a new building is
yeah,
less
yeah,
sustainable. And that's what we are doing in the Central Vista. We are breaking everything down and then we are
yeah.
making a huge mall. It looks like a mall.
Absolutely.
The building looks like a mall.
I think you've rightly pointed out. I mean, that's the latest revolution. That's the biggest scandal that has unfolded just 3 days ago.
Yeah,
The government filed an affidavit in the Supreme Court
yeah,
while substanting that look, it is a new parliament, a new house for the prime minister, for the vice
mm,
president, etc., etc. And the secretariat that has to come up. So all those issues, but they pointedly said in the Supreme Court that it's not a TOD. That's a
mm,
transit-oriented development. Okay,
mm.
so TOD is nothing but land monetization.
That I
That's what
understand.
TOD is.
Yeah, yeah,
TOD
yeah,
is.
yeah,
So and now in a reply to one of the journalists,
yeah.
the Ministry of Housing Affairs has said it is a TOD.
Oh
So
wow.
just like, yeah, so you can easily understand what does
Because they
that
already
mean.
have the metros. That's what.
Yes, they
Yeah.
already had the narrative that they already have done this in
Yeah.
Sabarmati. They are doing it various places.
Yeah.
So we can, I mean, we could smell that, but we could not substantiate it. Now it is being substantiated very
But
starkly.
also again, because he's a great leader, he's the great ruler. He can do what he wants with complete impunity. So, and
No, I think Napoleon also thought, but Napoleon had to actually budge. No, he lost them.
well, some did not get away with it. Some
Yeah, yeah.
sadly did get away with
Yeah,
making
but
pyramids
that
and
is the difference. I mean, even if someone is great, I mean, we could, in the elected autocracy,
yeah.
but at the same time, I think what is important is, I mean,
By
where are
great,
the
I'm
people?
not talking about the quality of their personality. By
Yeah,
great,
yeah,
I'm talking about the magnitude of
the
their
metaphor. Yeah,
influence.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So I can understand what you're saying, but it's not just that. It's more to also to do with Vastu, what the central is there, and some of the jargons that and of course ideological, because they've been told that if it's around Parliament, they will not come back to power again. So they
Oh,
must before the next election. Yeah, that's why dates are so important.
and so what are
They
they doing
must.
about the Nizamuddin? Because that is the curse. That's the ultimate curse we have.
I don't think that. I mean, for the Parliament presently, they think that it should be a triangular form, and
Okay.
with all that, yeah.
But
So very,
okay.
very funny and very interesting times we are passing through.
Yeah.
But this is what Vivan Sundaraman actually pointed out. From the era of anxiety to
Yeah.
the era of fear,
Yeah.
and era of anxiety gives you creativity. No, even if
Yeah.
there is anxiety, I mean,
Yeah.
but era of fear kills your entire creativity,
Yeah.
and that's what we are witnessing
But we don't see
exactly.
Bimal Patel designing in fear.
No, but then I mean, he's not designing in fear, but if we can see the fear around, that's why there's no competition in the design. No,
Okay.
let us assume that there should have been a new parliament,
Yeah.
and let us assume that there was I mean, there was this huge necessity for a parliament building to come up.
Yeah.
Let let there be a competitive design. No, where is
I
that
think there
competition?
was a competition, and I don't know what
There was no,
came out
it
of
was
it.
all hoax. It was just
I mean, it
kind
always
of
is, but
L1. There was just kind of L1. You can't have an L1 formula for a design.
yeah.
Come on. Yeah.
Well, this is now this it's become one of those things where you say that history repeats itself first as tragedy and
Always
then
in a
as
spiral.
farce.
Yeah, always in a
First as
spiral.
tragedy
Never
and
repeats. Yeah.
no, no. And so next question is a personal question. I don't know if like this will fit in with the rest of the interview, but this something that everyone has been talking about, and this is deeply connected with the model of development, especially when it comes to Delhi, is that people have suddenly like everyone is talking about it. It's become almost a meme. The Nizamuddin curse has become a meme, and there was like this Tughlakabad, and I live very near to Tughlakabad. Uh, Tughlakabad has a very similar history where like one king thought I can come in and I can put everything in order and everything is clean cut and I can make this and like and then the city failed. And then there was this case of Sir Lutyens who in his writing says that I'm teaching by building, I'm teaching the monkeys how to live like human beings. Those were his words. And
But you should, okay. But you should also remember what Baker said.
okay, what
And
did
when Lutyens went to England, because he
yeah
was here just for 3 or 4 months, then eight
yeah
months it was Baker who used to decide.
yeah
He said, if and he said this is our actually answer to the rising national independence movement. Yeah, and you know why? Because he said, just keep the entire British architecture either in Simla or Calcutta.
yeah
So here, if we have to sustain, we
yeah
must get the Indian architecture. That's why he brings in the Mughal, he brings
yeah
in the temple,
yeah
so
yeah
that red sandstone, the
yeah
dome.
yeah
And very interestingly, he points out that this should be in sync to the Indian ethos.
yeah
Now, according to Baker, the Indian ethos is, and he points out that we should go back to the to Akbar's Sulhekul.
yeah
So you had Lutyens who,
yeah
I mean, as you rightly said, but we
yeah
also had Baker, and actually
yeah
Baker prevailed uh,
yeah
on many. I mean, so the very interesting actually
yeah
work by Swapna Little and by Vivan Sundaram that
Yeah.
actually one should inquire and then come to know more about
Yeah.
this entire Latins. And of
Yeah.
course, Latins was, we know for whom the Latins was developed. But the point is, even if, say, it was a colonial legacy, I mean, they weren't there, I think, for more than 15 years or 16 years. The 70 years we've governed from the same premises. And all of a sudden we find, no, it's colonial legacy, it's all bullshit.
So no, but what I'm trying to come at is to the original point in a way where I'm saying like, yes, Delhi has failed multiple times. It has failed every time someone tries to design Delhi top down. That's what happened with
Yeah,
your Shahjahanabad, parts of
yeah.
Shahjahanabad actually, because some parts are organic, but
The
a lot of it,
old Delhi you're
yeah,
talking about.
that's
Yeah,
that's something that happened where he said that okay, everyone will pool in money and we'll just design the city to look like an amazing city, and
yeah.
it works initially, but it's not sustainable. That's the
Actually
point.
true.
It's not the
Actually true.
curse. It's not the curse
Yeah.
of
See, the
Nizamuddin.
point,
It is
no, no, it's,
designing unsustainable
I,
cities.
I think I am not qualified to comment on Delhi that way.
Yeah,
Of course, I mean, but I know how this the entire process of city building takes place. There's a
yeah,
massive accumulation of wealth from the
yeah,
people.
yeah,
So, when Britishers developed Simla, which is
yeah,
the town that I come from,
yeah,
my traditional communities never knew how to live on a mountain town. So in summers we used to climb up, and
yeah.
winters we used to climb down. That's how we used to migrate.
Okay.
But the British, with their engineering feat,
Hmm.
okay, they constructed the first hydropower.
Hmm.
Uh, so with hydropower, you have electricity, so they
Hmm.
could heat up even when it is sub-zero temperature.
Hmm.
At the same time, they could lift water because of the same energy.
Hmm.
So they could lift water from those sources. And I don't think it's anywhere in the world
Hmm.
that the Britishers lifted 2,000 meters head
Wow.
and then provided water to the city.
Hmm.
So that's a wow. But the wow underneath has a lining. And the lining is
Hmm.
who pays for that,
Yeah.
cost of
Yeah.
production of water.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's almost 120 rupees per kiloliter. That's the production cost.
Yeah.
They could sustain because it was an empire. So
Yeah.
they had the imperial loot
Yeah.
from different parts of the world and then invest here.
Yeah.
Now, where do we go? How
Yeah.
do we loot? So,
Yeah.
that sustainability is also such a big question. Such a big
Yeah.
question, yeah.
So.
So I think what is important, and that's why I go back to Jan Makart,
Hmm.
planning with nature, which is
Hmm.
so very important. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, so that was a very educational discussion, and we got to learn a lot of very interesting things. I had not thought about like some of the things before, which like I have been observing myself. Some of the things you pointed out, I have talked about in my thesis, but some of the things I have not, because you have obviously studied this entire process of liberalization in more detail. I studied it from a very specific perspective, very narrow perspective, just looking at Gurgaon. And I actually talked to, I have a friend in Gurgaon, Mr. Dahiya, who has done a research on the water table of Gurgaon and where the
I
lakes
think
have
I've
went.
met him.
Yeah, Mr. Dahiya. He has done
Yeah.
very amazing Google imaging and
Yeah,
GIS imaging on the.
yeah, amazing work he's done. Yeah.
Yeah. So I looked at things from like that perspective, but like now I think we have learned some. Even I have learned something very interesting today. I hope to see you again on the
No,
show.
I can share some of the practical anecdotes with you. I mean, probably in the next show. The first
Yeah.
file that came to our office was privatized water. I said,
Oh
what the hell
wow.
is this? I mean, all our lifetimes. I mean, our
Yeah.
lifetime means our.
Yeah.
When I'm post 18, when we were in the movement, we have opposed this. How can we allow that?
Yeah.
So then how those layers were built, and we built in the Shimla water system,
Yeah.
which is now considered to be one of the finest in the
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
And of course, now again there's a threat. I mean, they want to privatize it further.
Yeah.
So they're very interesting. The praxis, I mean, what
Yeah.
you learn in the praxis. Yeah?
How can people
So
follow you, your writings, and you do videos for NewsClick right now, and you have done shows in the past?
I
How
don't
can
know
people
how,
follow?
how
On
I don't know
Facebook,
because
Instagram,
yeah, Facebook, but on Twitter definitely I share all the
Twitter.
stuff.
Okay.
Twitter and Facebook, yeah, I share all
Can you
the
share
stuff.
your Twitter ID, which people should
It's
follow?
at Tikender, that's all.
Tikender, okay. You
At
found that
Tikender.
easily? You found your name very
Yeah,
easily?
I don't find another name by
Okay, well,
by
that's,
that word, yeah.
yeah. Like, there is the good and bad of having a unique name. Like, my Kshitij
Yeah, good and
name
bad,
gets
definitely.
murdered. Like I've been called from Kushti to Katerina, everything. I,
My God.
I'm impervious to insults now.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot for your time, and thanks a lot
Thank
for
you.
coming to the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your
It was
time.
lovely speaking to you.
Yeah, same
Thank you.
here. Bye.
Yeah.